and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast for people who are, shall we say, wine curious and want to learn more about it without any of the snobbery that's sometimes associated with wine. On today's show, we're interviewing one of the top wine growers in California. His name is Steve McIntyre, and he's in charge of 17,000 acres of wine grapes growing in Monterey and San Luis Obispo counties. It is a big job, but this grower and winemaker is as down to earth as they come. We're going to talk with him today about the joys and the challenges of life among the vines. We are, of course, the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm Mary Babbitt.
And I'm Mary Orland. And Steve McIntyre is truly one of the OG grape growers and winemakers here in Monterey County. He dreamed of being a rock star, but lucky for us, the wine bug bit. Steve helped create the guidelines for the Sustainability Certification Program, SIP Certified, Sustainability in Practice, and he also helped establish the Santa Lucia Highlands AVA, or American Viticultural Area. Having planted about 20%, having planted and farmed, I should say, 20% of the vines in this region, Steve knows some of the secrets of coaxing out the best of the expressions of the region from vine to glass. We're honored to be with Steve himself here at the McIntyre Tasting Studio in Carmel Valley. We're at what's the gateway to Carmel Valley. And we are surrounded by rocks from a vineyard in the Arroyo Seco region of Monterey County. And we also are looking at some photos of these adorable dogs that are in his family, the Bernese Mountain dogs. So, Steve, welcome to Sip Sip Hooray.
Thank you, Marys.
Yeah, you have a mighty big job. We are grateful that you took time out for us today. Which grapes need your tending today that you're not getting to because of us?
Oh, well, fortunately, we have quite a team of folks that make my job a heck of a lot easier than it otherwise would be. And that's what's really exciting now, is it allows me to focus on the more of the science end of things when it comes to either water or carbon sequestration. Now is something we're really getting into through regenerative ag techniques, and the microbiome we're looking at in vineyard now, and of course all the traditional canopy management that goes on with fine wine growing. So.
How did you set out in the wine world? I mean, you've wound up in this really big spot, in this big position, in charge of a lot. Mm-hmm. You started out singing at bar mitzvahs?
Yeah, I was on the bar mitzvah circuit, you could say, in college, free food and meeting people and singing at weddings and bar mitzvahs and things. And I thought that was going to be a means to an end, but fortunately, I grew up in a farming family, avocados and citrus in Ventura County. And my dad convinced me that, being a musician, I didn't quite have what it took to make the big time. So what was attractive to me about wine and winemaking and grape growing was it would combine art, really, because you can give the same grapes to two different winemakers and make, two different wines, as evidenced by our winemaker series here at McIntyre. But it combined science, which I was really into. I went to school at Fresno State and got both my degree in viticulture and a master's in enology. So I have both disciplines, if you would, to be a wine grower. And I really didn't know what I wanted to focus on until I got to Hahn in 1983. And decided, maybe a cellar at 55 degrees with wet feet and rubber boots with a jacket on all summer long wasn't really for me. So I started out as assistant winemaker, and then I morphed into being a viticulturist for Hahn until 92, when we started our own farming company, Monterey Pacific. So.
Great. And how did you make the leap from being a grape grower to opening your own wine label?
Yeah, so after I made wine as an assistant winemaker. It's just one of those things that you can't stop doing. And home winemaking, home consumption, and friends and acquaintances. So in 2005, we finally got serious about what we were doing, and we hired a marketing person. And so that put a lot of pressure on us to perform. And it's been great because it's been an organic growth from the onset, and we don't have to sell wine to make a living. And so it allows us to concentrate on quality and a continuum of improvement, because let's face it, Europe has 500, 600 years on us, and we're trying to achieve the same goals, and that is to make the best wine we possibly can. And when I started at home, we were farming Cabernet and Merlot and Cabernet Franc, which it's all gone in the Highlands, and rightfully so, because it wasn't a no-brainer, like I like to say, because we had to struggle to make decent wines from those grapes. Whereas with Pinot and Chardonnay, there's not much of a struggle because if it's all done, so much of it, not all of it, is done out in a vineyard, and then you're delivering the grape, and you're just, as a winemaker, you're just trying not to screw it up. You're the babysitter, and you have control over the processing notes and the style and everything else. But you're basically working with, a really great grape that allows you to achieve world-class status. And there's only really 5 or 6 places in the world, when you think about it, that you can grow world-class Pinot Noir. And I'm grouping some together, but I would say the Mendocino, Russian River, those are contiguous. Willamette Valley, certainly. Here, Santa Lucia Highlands, Santa Rita Hills, Burgundy, got to throw that in there. And then there may be some other areas, like Marlborough, Tasmania, something. But those places, I think, are not quite as proven as the regions that I previously mentioned. So, I mean, when we put it in that kind of perspective, it's really a small world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a lot of acreage, but it's a small world. You're right. And I love that notion that you're babysitting the vines. So meaning that if you've done everything right in terms of planting the right grapes and taking care of the trellising and everything else, it's just a matter of letting nature do its thing.
Yeah, the reason I use babysitter, it's because, a great babysitter knows when the kid's about to jump in the pool, even though her back's to him or her. And the same thing with winemaking. There's so much experience, and at my age, I'm in my 60s now. It's all about mentoring. We've got these young people that with all this energy, but they shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel. And winemaking and grape growing, in my opinion, and in Europe as an example, is, as I said, it's a continuum, but it's evolution and not a revolution. So to me, revolution is starting over. And so that's why I think that there's so much value in what we do and in the experience that we all have as we get older, right?
So how can you tell us about the evolution you've seen in the Santa Lucia Highlands and in your vineyards and winemaking?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So there's been so many facets. Road direction, clones have been huge. Part of our vineyard's own rooted. We don't know what clone it is. It was planted in 72, so it's 50 years old. So clones became really, really important, especially with Pinot Noir. And then trellis architecture. Our original trellis is 12-foot rows, so there's a lot of wasted space there. So we put it on a Lear architecture, which is a 36-inch cross arm. So that gave us a more efficient trellis system for that spacing. And then all of our new stuff is planted on 8-foot rows and vertical. And then we decided to go to Guyot pruning from spur pruning. That was a quality leap. And then finally...
What's the difference?
I'm sorry?
Excuse me for interrupting, but what's the difference between those two?
So spur pruning is pretty traditional. You see a lot of it around here, where you have these 2 bud spurs spaced every fist, say 4 inches, 5 inches from one another along a cordon that's horizontal to the ground, parallel and horizontal. And Guyot is 1 or 2 canes only per vine, and they're draped out on the wire, and they're renewed on a yearly basis. So it's really cane pruning, but the French call it Guyot, and we prefer to use that term.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Got it. Thanks for that explanation. And you had one more, and you said, and finally, and I interrupted you.
Oh, yeah, finally, soil.
Mm-hmm.
When I went to school 40 years ago, we studied physical soil science and chemistry soil science. Well, nothing was said about the living soil, and now that's everything. So your mycorrhizal fungi, your bacteria, your viruses, all of that microbiome, just like our guts, is important in terms of the vine's survival and even wine quality. There's been some initial research done. It's not cause and effect, it's association, but certain bacteria and fungi are associated with higher scoring wines in terms of a study that was done by Dr. Cook out of UC Davis and Farniente in conjunction with Farniente Winery. So we're just touching on that and how we can what we do in the vineyard, how that influences the microbiome on the grape, because like our wines, we don't add yeast or malolactic bacteria, so we're using the natural flora and fauna to ferment. Well, now in the soil, you have another world, if you would, ecosystem of bacteria, fungi, and viruses that are influencing the vine. And what we do, herbicides, pest control, cultivation, all of that has impacts. So I think that's the most exciting new frontier.
Sure, there's so much to it. You're like a soil scientist in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's so cool. Then I'm always curious when people talk about, we've noticed an improvement in the quality of the wines. Can you tell us that in layman's term, what it means in terms of what I'm tasting or smelling in the glass?
Sure. I think the biggest impact on winemaking has been oxygen management. So Randall Graham, I gotta love him, got a chance to farm for him in my career.
That's Randall Graham of Bonnie Doon for our listeners who don't know.
Randall Graham of Bonnie Doon. He used to say that it's surfing the reductive wave. So if you're out,
Randall style.
Yeah. So if you're out there surfing and you don't catch the wave, well, that's a failure, right? Mm-hmm. And that would be like your wine having hydrogen sulfide or some thiol that makes it smell, bad. So on the other hand, if you get out ahead of the wave and you wipe out, well, that would be oxidation. So like sherry. So on one hand, you have reductive winemaking. On the other hand, you have oxidative winemaking. You want to be right in the middle, right in the sweet spot, riding the wave.
Where you're sitting on top of the world,
right?
To quote the Beach Boys.
That's true.
So different winemakers have different risk tolerance for oxygen. If you use a lot initially in the winemaking process, you end up with a lot more aromatics and complexity, but you might be sacrificing ageability. So there's this yin and yang in terms of how we manage oxygen in winemaking.
So there's always some trade-offs.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, and I love the effort that I hear and see continually and growing over the last few years, people trying to be better stewards of the land and take care of this, the area,
right.
Not just for the season, for their particular label, but for generations.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you see a lot of that and been active in working on that sort of stuff.
Yeah, in fact, I really encourage people, and I wouldn't have said this a long time ago, the Sierra Club has a movie out on Netflix. It's a documentary, and it's called Kiss the Ground. Mm-hmm. And I think it's one of the most remarkable movies out there. However, you have to get past the fact that Woody Harrelson is the narrator. It's just, it's not so serious when he talks, but And you have to also understand that the pesticide section of the movie is a bit dated and generalized. But aside from that, the regenerative soil section is right on. They're talking about a number of things, one of which is Dr. Alan Savory, who we've worked with off and on for over 20 years in terms of holistic management of agricultural systems, or world systems, ecosystems for that matter. He's now becoming well known. You know, he was somewhat obscure years ago, but very important. He's worked for governments in the United Nations and what have you. And now people are really catching on to what he's been saying for years and years. And regenerative agriculture is the new buzzword, really.
Right, I was going to ask you to explain it.
Well, so you have sustainability, and sustainability has the three pillars, right? You have environmental, social, and fiscal sustainability. Well, regenerative ag takes the soil science and moves it to the level of carbon offsets and carbon sequestration, and really, truly preserving a natural resource. And that's where the movie really comes in and explaining that portion of agriculture. We and agriculture have a tremendous opportunity through such techniques and products as biochar. And there's a great book on biochar that I recommend to people called Burn by Albert Bates. And that particular book explains, you don't have to listen to the whole thing on Audible, but you get the introduction in chapter 1, and you start to understand how biochar is one of the most high-value carbon sequestration materials out there. And when you put that in the soil, you kind of supercharge your soil, but what you're really doing is you're replacing everything that's up in that atmosphere in terms of CO2 and methane, carbon, back into the soil where it originally came from.
Where do you get biochar?
You make it. Yeah. And basically it's called pyrolysis. So you take any feedstock that goes in the landfill. Let's say all the tree trimming from tree companies, or almond hulls, or the solids from wastewater treatment that are dried out and then put in the landfill. You put them in, I'm going to call it a glorified pizza oven is the best way to explain it, that limits the amount of oxygen that can come into the chamber. So it's burnt at a very, very relatively low temperature. And it traps all the gases, so you don't have the off gas of nitrous oxide or any other type of carbon monoxide, again, carbon going up into the atmosphere. So it traps all of that, and you end up with this stuff that looks like activated charcoal. And it is just, it'll last for hundreds, if not thousands of years in the soil, and it can be go through an analysis that can determine the quality, which determines the carbon sequestration value in what they call quarks, C-O-R-C. And those quarks can be sold on private markets and public markets, some in Europe, for offsets to companies like Spotify, American Airlines, United Airlines. And again, we're taking this material, we're making it, and we're putting it back in the soil. That being said, it can also be used for concrete, asphalt, any place you want to put carbon and not have it go in the atmosphere.
It's genius. I love it.
Yeah, it's a really remarkable thing. In fact, my vision is that someday we'll all go to our front gate magazines and order our own home biochar maker, because we wouldn't need landfills. You take your garbage out, you put it in the biochar maker, and once a month somebody comes along and maybe they're actually buying that material from you because it's worth something now.
Dang, it's like compost, kind of.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I mean, some people are able to home compost.
That's right. It's exactly like that, and now you're using it. It's being taken and putting to use. So regenerative.
So in the soil, let's say in a vineyard, would it be like, what does it act like in the soil? Like a sponge, or does it act like a fertilizer?
A little of both. It's not so much a fertilizer as it is, carbon, organic matter. The higher generally soils are in organic matter, the more fertile they are. And that's a really relative statement because 2 to 5% is considered very fertile. But a lot of soils now are, in the 1% range. So the bacteria have a home for it's both ion exchange and anion exchange. So it has the capacity to hold onto nitrates, to phosphorus, to all these different minerals, and then the roots are on the rhizosphere of the little root hairs of the plant, and you have this symbiotic relationship. The bacteria and fungi are getting exudate from the roots, which contains sugar in it. So that's their carbon source, just like we eat food. And then their exudate, if you would, is all of the things that the plant needs by combining those minerals and converting them to forms that are usable for plants. So without that, if you've seen the movie Martian, and the guy's left behind on Mars, and he, what does he do, right? He has to go get the waste from the septic system on the spacecraft in order to put in the soil to get anything to grow.
Oh, yeah.
The soil's just a structure. It's just a scaffolding. So
it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
It's just
really
cool fascinating.
Stuff.
Man, oh man.
So, we've got a selection of your wines in front of us, which is really nice. And so the whole reason to go through all of this, to make all these efforts, is to really, it results in what's in these glasses.
Yes.
So let's talk about this first wine. It's a beautiful rosé.
Yeah, this is our 2021 rosé of Pinot Noir. It's a purposely made rosé, so we pick it fairly early, so the alcohols are less than 13.
It's nice.
And
I love that.
A little bit of oak on maybe 5-10% to blend back, soften, and get it out early into the...
It's nice and tart and refreshing.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Beautiful. But the reason you're going through all this is so how does it impact the flavor and aroma of what we have in the glass?
I don't think we totally understand how it affects those things, but we know, because we don't know cause and effect.
Okay.
But we do have associations, as I mentioned, from Dr. Cook's work up at UC Davis. We're just learning. We're really in that infancy of understanding how the microbiome and regenerative, we know that it's good for the environment, right? And we know it's good for the climate, but how it impacts the wine remains to be seen.
Okay, I love that you're open to all of this new learning. As you said, you graduated 30 years ago, 40?
Almost 40.
Okay, so
40, yeah.
From Fresno, and things were a lot different then, and it would be easy to stay in your same lane and keep doing, because I'm sure you could be successful in that lane, but the fact that you're seeking newer, better, more sustainable ways of growing.
Yes.
Not only grapes, but ultimately, and everything that California and any other place grows. More sustainable ways of living, I suppose I'm trying to say, is really impressive. And I'm sure that's been, in addition to just the day-to-day of your job, that's another thing you're doing on the side to learn all this stuff.
Well, that's why having a great team allows me to do that now, so we can think about, the future and our impacts. Yeah, thank you.
So what does your day-to-day look like? Give me a typical day in the life of Steve McIntyre.
A lot of emails.
That's really exciting.
A lot of Zoom. And I have to thank Zoom for making things much more efficient. And I have to use carbon to get to some place.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
You don't have to physically be in a location to have meaningful conversations now.
So we're meeting with teams. We're working on our biochar our project. We're trying to set that up at the Marina landfill here in the next, by maybe September, October, making biochar there. We're currently buying it from Pacific Biochar up in Susanville. And then I'm very active, that is, in water politics. So since the advent in 2014 of the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, SGMA, as it's affectionately called, which gives local control to solving water issues. I've been involved in the Salinas Valley in that effort. I'm elected to a groundwater subbasin. So that's taking a fair amount of my time. And then I'm reading a lot and collaborating with other science folks, and to foster these ideas and try and make them practical. So that's, and then of course there's all the administrative stuff like signing checks.
Well, you know, winemaking, wine growing, winemaking is definitely a team and collaborative process. I mean, your name's on the label, but as you said, you've got to have a really great team working with you to do this. So let's talk about the next wine you've got in your lineup.
Well, the next wine on that theme of collaboration, let me grab it.
I hate to pour these out. It's really nice.
I know.
So maybe your future wall in here would be like all biochar blocks.
So right,
Really good idea.
yeah. So right now we're sitting at the tasting bar at the McIntyre Tasting Studio, and behind the bar is all of these rocks that are in these wire cages, and it just, you know, has this very earthy feel, like you're just, you know, in the vineyard.
Yeah, we're amongst the rocks, and it's really cool.
Yeah, this particular wine here, closer to the mic. So we came up with this idea. My daughter's the general manager, Kristen McIntyre, and then we have our consulting winemakers. Byron Kasugi's been with us forever and does all the heavy lifting on the winemaking. As I mentioned, I'm in a hurry because I'm 65. Maybe I got 20, 30 more vintages if I'm lucky.
Oh, don't count down. That's
It puts it in perspective.
It sure does.
And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to accelerate the pace of discovery, and we believe we can do that with collaboration. So we picked 3 and soon to be 4 winemakers, and we've done this winemaker series.
Okay.
We just released the first of the winemaker series wines made by Don von Staveren, another person that I've collaborated with over the years. Don of Artesa and Chateau St. Jean, 3 Sticks. So he's made a Chardonnay and a Pinot Noir. And then Sabrine Rodhams from Rath.
Sure. Sabrine.
She's done the same in the 2020 vintage. This is the 2019 year tasting. And then Byron Kasugi is making his own. And what we've done here is we've let the winemakers go into the vineyard, choose wherever they want to make, you know, what grapes they want, and make it in any style that they choose. So like Don, he's 14 months in barrel. Byron's 5. You know, Sabrine's somewhere in between. And so that we get together and taste these blind and debate and learn and create. And so that really moves us forward a much faster rate than we have our estate wines. We have 3 levels. We have our SLH Chardonnay, which is our entry, and our estate, which is the next level up, which is direct to consumer. And now we have this Chardonnay, and we do the first 2, this SLH and the estate, by going in and sorting through barrels, different coopers, different clones, different picking times. We have 3 different clones, and we assemble a blend that we think is the best, and that's the estate. And then the second best would be the SLH. So,
with the goal of a rising tide lifts all boats. You're all learning from one another.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. That's so cool.
Well, what I love is that you've got the name of the winemaker. It says a winemaker collaboration with Don von
Staveren, yes.
That, I mean, you don't see that in wine.
Well, we give credit where credit's due.
It's fantastic.
There's a little bio on the back. Don is a surfboard maker, and he makes killer macaroons.
He makes killer macaroons.
Yeah, we need to get on this
multi-talented.
schedule.
I
this
know.
calendar.
I just
You had me at macaroon.
Yeah. And Byron has his hobbies, and he consults around the world and such. And then Sabrine, you've met with her.
Yes, we have.
Yes, we did a podcast episode with her. If y'all haven't heard it yet, go back into our archives and definitely listen.
I think she makes soap, right?
Yes,
she
and
does.
chickens.
Yeah,
And chickens,
I know she does,
yeah,
chickens.
exactly.
So when you're not making wine, and we've got probably more to taste, but when you're not making wine, what do you do?
Well, I still play guitar, and so I really enjoy that. And then I help my wife with her legacy breeding of Bernese Mountain dogs.
Yeah, so I mentioned that in the intro. Tell us more.
Well, there's legacy breeders and there's vanity breeders, and what my wife Kimberly's trying to do is to work with other breeders, collaborate to increase the longevity and the health of a breed that's average age lifespan, that is 7.8 years, and has problems with a couple of cancers, histiocytic disease, histiocytic cancer, and then joint issues.
Right.
So it's a lot of work, a lot of science involved, and she's been pretty successful. Probably her average age of litter is about almost 10 years old now.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so better than average.
So right now you have 6
We
dogs
do.
in the house?
Yeah, we have 6, 3 breeding females, 2 males, and a little puppy that's going to go to some lucky person.
So
And
great.
they're adorable dogs. The photos are right behind us, but
They're cute as can
they
be.
are super
Yeah.
cute.
They're big dogs, though, too. 6 dogs in your house is a lot.
Yeah,
Who
they are big
Who
dogs.
gets the couch? You or the dogs?
That's our one rule: no couches, no beds.
Okay.
Smart. But having puppies too, their hours are their own. So
Yeah.
are you part of that whole process when they're up in the middle of the night and
No.
all that? No. Okay. Yeah.
I do frost control.
Oh, so you've got other babies
Right,
in the
I
vineyard
have
to
other
take
babies,
care of.
but I don't function very well without sleep. So she has, that nurturing, motherly after raising 3 children.
So you mentioned your daughter works with you.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's wonderful. It must be really fun for you to have
is.
the next generation in here.
Yeah, she controls all the inventory, so I have to beg for wine.
But tell her thanks for sharing. This
I
is
know,
delicious, and hats off to
Yes,
Dawn
this-
for a really
this
lovely
Chardonnay
Chardonnay.
is just beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably try something else.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do some
Next, we
Pinot.
hate to dump this one too.
Since you're having Dawn's Chardonnay, we'll go for the Pinot Noir next.
All
Great.
right.
See how that turned out.
All right, Dawn, I hope you're listening.
His wife, Margot, has been the winemaker for Chateau Saint Jean forever. So they're quite a dynamic.
So how does that work? He's down here in Chateau Saint Jean, being up in Sonoma.
Well, he's up there. You can make wine anywhere,
Yeah.
right? So we make our wines up north.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
And because Byron lives up there, what we do, my feeling on that is, Rome was the center of the universe for a long time, and Napa, at least in North America, is kind of that center of that same universe, winemaking universe. So all knowledge flows out from that kind of dynamic, and so you're always learning something, and they're just so immersed up there that they can't help but be exposed to all kinds of new experiences.
Thank you.
So this is 2019 Don von Stavern Winemaker Series.
And this is the Pinot Noir.
Yes.
All right. And these grapes came from, he got to pick which
clones.
Which clones, okay.
Right.
Do you know what he chose on these?
Yeah, what he did different from our other winemakers, Byron chose one clone, Sabrine chose one.
Wow.
Don went for several, and he field blended them.
This is so good.
Thank you.
It's really
It
delicious.
is, and it's really vibrant. It's
Wow.
it's really alive.
Yeah. It used to be that we thought that we had to be super uniform. We're taught as winemakers and vineyard people, everything should be the same, same shoot length, same number of leaves per shoot, whatever. Well, to me, that's like electronic music. Electronic music is great, but it's perfect. So perfect pitch, perfect syncope. Well, if even the best orchestra in the world is not perfect. Right? And so I think we're pendulum is swinging back to less perfect wines, so you have more complexity and
they're more expressive.
Diverse. Yeah.
Exactly.
In diversity. You're right that it's not
not uniform.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's more like a live performance versus a recorded performance.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with your collaborative series, well then, okay, so you'll get together and talk about how they each did, and are you the critic, and do you critique them, or what happened?
No,
like, well, I see what you've made here. Let me tell you.
There's actually what's really fun is, I mean, people are competitive, right? So it's all blind, and we throw them in. We call it a competitive set tasting. So we'll throw in a bunch of high-scoring wines, from all over the state, and Oregon, and sometimes Burgundy. And so you're nervous that you hope your wine did well. And they usually do, and they're all beautiful wines. It's really a tough tasting. But afterwards, we unveil them, and we start to talk about, I wonder why, what did you do? Oh, yeah, okay. And so this round table with food and wine, there's just, it's like, for me, it's like songwriting collaboration. I think some of the greatest songs have been duos or trios or groups that get together and write. And they're not in a vacuum. There's always a producer, right? Like Quincy Jones or the Canadian Foster, David Foster, or somebody like that, that just elevates. And
but you look at the ways in which Paul McCartney and John Lennon pushed each other in different directions, and how that really worked.
It sure did. Yeah. And then the fifth Beatle, or what?
Yes,
Paul,
the fifth
Martin,
Beatle.
George
Did you see
Martin?
the?
Yeah, exactly. George.
Yeah. Did you see the Beatles documentary?
I haven't yet.
Oh, you've got to see it. Yeah.
I wanted to. That'd be great.
Yeah.
So what was your favorite song to sing at a bar mitzvah or a wedding? Like, what were you really stoked to, like, I'm going to hear it come, I'm going to win them with this one?
Well, at a bar mitzvah, it was always sunrise, sunset.
Oh, nice.
And at a wedding, Always and Forever, back in that 80s time frame.
Nice.
I hadn't thought about that song in forever.
Yeah, that was probably the most requested one.
Okay. Cool.
So fun.
Or Danny's song or something. No, no, that wouldn't have been a good one. But yeah, actually, it might have.
Like, if you were at a karaoke bar, what would you want to sing right now? Like, everyone should know their karaoke song, right?
A karaoke bar. That's a really great question. That'd
one,
probably be a
Mary?
Kenny Loggins song.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Mary, do you have a karaoke song? Mary B?
I would probably pick You're So Vain, Carly Simon.
That's a good one.
And I'd ask you, you could do the Mick Jagger background. That's always like a trivia. Who's doing backups? And it's Mick Jagger on that song. Anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Or Lizzo. Maybe I do Lizzo.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
That's a wide range. That's so great. So I've also read, as part of sustainability is taking care of your employees.
Yeah.
And can you tell us about the initiatives you have at McIntyre to take care of your employees?
Mm-hmm. Well, the parent company's Monterey Pacific, and we named that as such because I wanted it to be something that would survive us, perhaps. So we really try and empower people. And I learned from Robert Mondavi. I was privileged enough to have my wife and I have dinner with him one night, and several other people. We weren't alone. But somebody asked him, and it was always so funny. He had such a high voice for such an immense personality, right?
Such a big character.
Yeah, and somebody asked him, so what do you attribute to your success, in the last 10 years? This was when they had gone public. And he said, I attribute it to my wife, Marguerite, because before I met her, I'd come into the office and I'd try and get everybody in there to conform to my standards. And she taught me how to let people be themselves and not be so judgmental. And when I started doing that is when we really started to take off, because then people have more discretionary effort. So for me, it's really learning that lesson.
Well, and he also really valued his employees.
Yes.
We were fortunate enough to be at his 90th birthday party.
Oh,
and
really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and every person who worked for him was not there working, they were there celebrating.
Yeah.
Their presence was important to him to celebrate his birthday.
right.
And I thought that
Yeah,
was
we
really
miss
cool.
those visionaries. You know, we have a lot of people looking down at spreadsheets in our industry right now. We need more people out there looking, like Randall Graham, looking beyond where we are. You know, and he was certainly one of those for
Do you
sure.
consider yourself a visionary here in Monterey
I
County?
don't know.
No?
Hard to say about yourself, but as I walked in saying, I've heard such great things about you from so many people. You are truly valued in this county and this
Yes.
area.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
And so,
Absolutely.
Mary, you mentioned in your intro the SIP, which of course, rang a
SIP
bell with me
certified.
because the podcast is Sip, Sip, Hooray. So tell me about the SIP certified thing.
So SIP, acronym for Sustainability in Practice. And, that was a Mondavi initiative. Talk about Robert Mondavi. That was a group of growers that got together in the 90s, and we were talking about best management practices, and we were all trying to learn from each other, collaborative effort. So we discovered a Swiss method that was being utilized to score sustainable wine or farming practices. And we adopted that because originality is the ability to hide one's source. and we made it a self-correcting questionnaire so that as we learned, we could change the questions that we were asking ourselves. And it was not a competition between each other, it was a competition with yourself. So that you might be here at this score and you want to keep growing, basically. You're not any better than anybody else in the group. And so that morphed into this certification process that they come out to our vineyards, they verify what we're putting in print in terms of how we're treating people, the environment, yada, yada. And then you have a score. And the next time they come out, 2 years, I think it's every 2 years, they do the same thing, and then you're supposed to improve. So that's basically how that program works. And then we can put it, as we do, on the back label of our wines, we have the SIP emblem.
So it's not punitive, it's motivational. Gotcha.
Right.
Absolutely. And you set goals, and you can set your own goals. The
Right.
program doesn't set them for you.
That's true. There are, so sustainability, as opposed to organic farming. Organic farming is farming in a box.
Right.
You're either inside it or you're outside of it, depending upon what you do. And I can go on that, but I won't.
Okay.
But that's another whole podcast
Exactly.
episode.
But I like the way you described that. You're
Yeah.
either all the way in or you're out.
Right. Where with sustainability, it's not about standards, it's about metrics, measuring improvement. That's really the key. Because the second we start to apply standards to something, they don't always apply to everybody.
Or every season.
Exactly. So that's where we have to be very careful. It's a slippery slope in sustainability about going down that standards road. And we have gone there, and then we kind of back away from it and go, oh, maybe that's not where we ought to go. So,
No, that's really cool.
yeah.
So you are known for Pinot and Chardonnay,
Mm-hmm.
but you also have the last wine that we're going to taste in the lineup, something totally different.
That's right. So, having worked at Hans Smith & Hook for 9 years, trying to make Cabernet under some difficult terroir, and I classify terroir as everything we can't control.
I like that.
So I got to where I decided I'm going to make a good Merlot if it hurts me. And we found a spot that we really liked the quality of Merlot, and I named it after my wife, so it's Kimberly Vineyard.
Nice.
Yeah, that worked really well on an anniversary. I didn't have to buy anything.
What a great gift.
But it's an area that's tucked out of the wind. The wind is really great for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, but it's not so good for Bordeaux varietals because it cools things off a little bit too quickly in the daytime. And we don't have enough diurnal change in temperature as opposed to like Stag's Leap or something. So this is cool climate Merlot. And if you thin the vines, and you get it out of the wind, so it's tucked in, it's in the Arroyo Seco AVA, tucked out of the wind, and you don't irrigate it much. This is where you can get away from those pyrazines, which tend to be, the vegetal components.
Oh, it's amazing for people who are intimate, just like, Merlot, no, especially after that infamous movie.
Right.
This will change their minds.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
I think it's
Fantastic.
so it's a chip on my shoulder.
The Merlot chip.
Yeah, because I wanted to do it and figure out how to do it and make it a no-brainer.
And bring Merlot back to its glory.
Yeah, right.
I like the kind of the acid component in
Yes.
this. It's very,
I don't really expect acid when I drink Merlot.
yeah, it's nice.
Sure. Yeah, good food wine.
And is this one just you? This isn't part of your collaborative group.
That's correct.
Yeah, this is all Steve.
But Byron does make it. I
Okay.
mean, the heavy lifting.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
collaborate, but I'm mainly, ideas and tasting and what have you, decisions.
So are you getting close to picking time in any of your vineyards?
No, although I think we'll be into sparkling probably the third week in August. So I guess.
Oh, that's right. You do make a sparkling.
Yeah, we haven't made it in a while because of the fire up in Lake County. The gentleman who was making that, Gerard Ployer, he lost his winery. So, we haven't been able to make sparkling for a couple of years, but we'll get back at it. So he retired. He just said,
He's done.
I can't do it
Enough,
again.
Yeah. It can be depressing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what's next?
Next for us is add a couple more winemakers to the winemaker series, and to replant a portion of the vineyard. We got 10 acres going in again, and next year, and take what we've learned and adapt the new block to those practices. And then the microbiome thing is just really fascinating. I think that it could explain why the biodynamic folks will tell you, well, it's better wine, we don't know why.
Yeah.
There could be their practices, I'm sure that their practices are impacting their microbiome. So, if you have one species or genus of bacteria more than another, well, maybe that has something to do with how the wine tastes. Maybe. So we'll find out.
I love the exploration and the spirit of adventure there.
And I think you had a groundbreaking on a new hospitality center.
Yeah.
Tell us about that real quick.
Well, I'm glad. Yeah, so 3 phases. We've completed the first phase, which is all the infrastructure for all 3 phases, parking, septic, all of that, good grading. And now this is a park, and we have a one structure, a pavilion, so we can do outdoor events and things. And then the next phase in 3 to 4 years, we're working on it now, so we hope to complete it in 3 to 4 years, is a tasting studio up there.
And where is this?
It's up in the Highlands at our estate vineyard.
Nice.
So, and it's designed around mitigating the wind, because it's kind of hard to have a tablecloth on a table up there in the afternoon. And then the third phase would be a barrel room built into the ground, and sort of subterranean. And then that will give us this courtyard, tasting room, pavilion type, with an apartment for people to stay and what have you. And that, that's kind of a 5 to 10 year time.
It's a big project, though. That's really exciting.
Yeah. Trying not to do it with any debt.
Good for you. We wish you success. And
thank you.
We'll have to come back and check it out when it happens.
Yes, we will.
We'll do an interview up there.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. I mean, you've helped me really understand especially with the regenerative agriculture, the biodiverse, not
Microbiome?
The microbiomes.
the microbiome, thank you, and biochar.
Yeah, this has been a real a fun learning experience for us, and I love your spirit of innovation and collaboration. I admire you for being a steward of the land and for the people who work the land and work for you. So good for you on all those fronts.
Well, thanks to both of you, Mary and Mary. Thank you.
It's been our sincere pleasure, and sip, sip, hooray, Steve.
Yes.
Sip, sip, hooray.
Cheers. Well, that's going to do it for our podcast today. Thank you for listening to Sip, Sip, Hooray. We hope if you enjoyed the show that you'll share it with your friends, your family. Spread the word about the Sip, Sip, Hooray podcast.
And you can do that by, one, going to our website, sipsiphoooraypodcast.com. There you'll see all the different podcast platforms we are on. And go to your favorite one and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode when it drops. And be sure to follow us on social media. We are at Sip Sip Hooray Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and Sip Sip Hooray, the number 1, on Twitter. Be sure to tag us with any photos if you've tried any of these wines or been to the wineries. We'd love to hear from you.
That's right. We want you in the Sip Sip Hooray family, so do stay in touch with us. And that's going to do it for us, Mary. It's time to go out and eat, drink, and be merry.
Absolutely. We're going to pop the cork and raise a glass.
Cheers to you, Mary Orland.
Cheers to you, Mary Babbitt. Sip Sip Hooray.
Sip Sip Hooray.